Right, so it's been a whole week since I've done this. Last time I did this, my internet was so bad, but I finally solved the root cause. So I'm pretty happy. And then this should be a very straightforward session. Is that in everyone's autopilot? I have 36 items. So let's see how many of them we can sort of knock through. So number one, people don't have enough experience to empathize with my pain. I think what I'm realizing is that sometimes I'll share what I'm going through and people would interpret it in a completely different way. I think most people interpret things from their perspective. They have the inability to step in other people's shoes. So when someone tells you a problem, you shouldn't view it within your own shoes, but you should try to jump into their shoes and try to really empathize with what they're going through. I think that's sort of been one of my strengths. Two, my sister. She's very like she's a very like she doesn't like she it's really hard for people to impress her. So as a result, she has a really, really tight, small circle. And I've grown to really appreciate and respect her opinions. Like if she has a view on certain friends of mine or certain peers, I'm starting to have a lot of respect for opinions because she is me, but on a whole nother level. Like I'm pretty picky with who I spend time with and who I give my energy to. She's like that, but like next level. So I'm gonna start leaning on on her judgment a lot more. Yeah. But I think, yeah, like I have some weird friends that she wouldn't say is boring or average, but weird might be actually a compliment. So I definitely want to ask her about one of my weird friends. What I also found, number three, I found that these sessions has sort of been a very good outlet for me to just talk and share my ideas. It's reduced any yearn for me to sort of um, chat with others. Like this is sort of my method of learning to love myself. Because like now this is all about me. Like I'm just talking about the things that I'm thinking about, and this is 100% selfish. And it's sort of just it's just me talking about me, and a result, it's the outlet that I have, and it's also ability for me to practice loving yourself because this is just me talking about myself, and it's sort of filling my own cup. So people talk about learning to love yourself. I think this is sort of a step in that right direction where there's no pressure for me to perform. I'm just being me. And yeah, number four. Ooh. So I have friends that when I invite them to things, I introduce them to my friends, they don't feel comfortable or they don't feel like it's a right fit for them to bring their partner, bring their girlfriends along. Deep down they know that their partner wouldn't be able to hang and it'll be sort of like a bit awkward, like their partner wouldn't be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And I definitely don't want that to be my partner. Like I don't want to have someone that I'd feel worried about bringing into sort of a sort of random setting. It's very precarious because I think this point I brought up is one of my friends, Anthony, just joined in. It is very similar to what we are talking about. Anthony, can you hear me? Number five. Um, what did
Yeah.
I write?
Hello.
Feeling. Hey, Anthony,
Hey man.
how's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good.
I was
Pretty chill.
I like throughout the week, I sort of stack up these different ideas and thoughts I have. And then like on these weekly calls, I just ramble on the different points and things I've been thinking about.
Mm.
I'm up to number five. I had like 36 points. I'm trying to interpret what number five means. I wrote dealing with small talk with voice messages. What does that mean? I think something I've been dealing with is when I message people, when you're messaging through just SMS and just text messages, it's so easy to just sort of have this never-ending chain of small talk. But when you send a voice message, it cuts through that because you can't really send a message being like, hey, what's up? So I think voice messages is something I'm going to do much, much more because it just cuts through all that small talk and, and and yeah, so that's something I wrote down. Uh, Number six, speaking with someone that can't relate to your problems actually makes me feel worse. Like I remember a scenario I was trying to share with a friend or someone about what I was going through that day, and they weren't able to relate. And the answer they provided, like I see where they're coming from, and they're sort of giving their best answer with their sort of set of worldviews and experiences. And it made me feel more isolated sharing my problem in that scenario. So I think, yeah, it's tough. Like, I do like sharing what I'm going through, my problems, but I don't like hearing answers that are completely not what I'm trying to share and sort of makes it feel like they're not listening at all. So I guess maybe I should be more selective with sharing my problems with those who are good listeners. But then I've seen people who are good listeners and they'll just ramble off a completely different response. So I think this is something I'll definitely need to play by ear a bit more. Like I do have a solid circle of people that I can share what I'm going through with, and they'll be able to sort of either give their own 2 cents or just sort of be a good listener and just hear me out. And then maybe the types of people that have been consistently giving me answers that actually make me feel worse, even though I sort of know they're sort of trying that. I don't know if they're trying, but they're sort of just they're doing they're sharing or they're doing what they can with their skill sets. And maybe those people I sort of do it a bit less. Because there's people who seem to want there's people who want to give advice. And I think those are the people you probably want to avoid sharing your problems to. Like I know people where they love just sharing their insights, their advice, like they want a chance to talk. And those people are probably you probably want to be sharing things to people that don't have a yearn to talk, I guess. Number seven, I'm gonna stop tweeting. Like over the last 2 months, I've been putting a lot of tweets, doing a lot of threads, and it's been fun because I've been able to have a random thought, pencil it down, stop midday, write it down, and sort of lock it in time. Like something I really want to do is like in 2, 3 years' time, go back to all the tweets that I did 2 years ago and see all the thoughts that were running through my mind, see all the different predictions that I might have locked in stone. I think this is going to replace that. Like, this is probably a better medium. Like, one, I put it in my notes. Two, I'm able to give more context on it. Three, when you read a tweet, it can come off completely different to how it's said. And four, I think this is probably a better time capsule. Like, if I were like, hey, do I want to show a tweet from me 2 years ago, or do I want to show a clip of me saying something 2 years ago? I think the clip is probably going to be much more valuable as like a time capsule. Eight, I think this is also going to replace me sort of sending thoughts to friends. Like sometimes I'll just have so many thoughts and I'll just send it to a bunch of friends. I still sort of do now, but this is going to be like a way better outlet. Like I had 36 items. Like I don't have 36 friends, or I don't have six friends that can take six notes a week and six different topics a week. So I think this is going to be a great outlet. And then friends could also just join into these as well and hear thoughts and bounce ideas. I'm still trying to figure out the format because like I'd like to have friends join in and have a discussion with, say, for example, Anthony, who's listening in right now, but at the same time, I do want to ramble off all the ideas that has been building up in my sort of notes. So I'm gonna have to figure out a balance. Hmm, I don't know. I'll figure that out. Um, Number nine. This another reason why I really like these sessions is because I can just add everyone on a calendar invite, and this is going to give like this is like when friends want to catch up, I'll be like, hey, just jump on this. And this is probably the best chance they can get like a gist of me, I guess. Because usually if I'm catching up with friends, like I'm not rambling and going through thoughts, I'm not talking about what I'm talking about. I usually try to keep things very contextual and talk about what they're going through and hear them out and maybe share my 2 cents. But this is probably the rawest form of me. Um, where like usually in like something I've been doing is when I want to do more is when I want to catch up with people, I want to say, hey, I'm gonna let you lead the conversation, and just let them take it from there. But even that exercise, um, the conversation is going to push towards their expertise and worldview. Whereas this is me sort of really having a blank canvas and me just going ham on what I'm thinking about. So I think this is probably the best. Um, like if people wanted to get a gist of me, like this is probably the rawest form. Because like now I'm thinking about like my Instagram content, my podcast, like none of those really get as raw as this. But I do have that insecurity of like maybe people don't want to like just join in and just listen to me chat. Like maybe I'm boring. So I think that's definitely an insecurity I think about. But then worst case scenario, no one ever joins. Like they join once and they never shop ever again. I just do these every week on my own. And that's fine as well. Also, it's a good outlet for me to divert people who I probably wouldn't want to sort of carve time out of my day to drive to a coffee store to catch up with them for lunch and then drive home. Like this is a better diversion. Like, hey, if you really want to catch up, just join this. 10. I'm gonna start doing these surprise, I call these lessons, but I'm gonna do these surprise lesson pop-ups throughout the week where if I do have this yearn to just talk and sort of like I'm yearning an outlet just because let's say all my friends are busy and everyone's like I'm just like, hey, I just really want to talk to someone, well, technically this I'm talking to myself, but if I really want to talk to someone, this I think I'm going to start scheduling them like randomly midweek, last minute sessions. I did one last week where it was sort of I scheduled this like 4:30 p.m. that afternoon, and then I think my energy definitely shifted throughout that day. So I'll probably do like 1 hour. Like if I really feel like I really want to get something off my chest, schedule this 1 hour out. And then if someone serendipitously joins, then that's cool. If not, then I'll just sort of um, do it on my own. But it sort of reminds me of sort of what Fred again is doing, where he does these surprise, random, impromptu pop-up shows. And whoever's available on a Tuesday night can quickly buy tickets and go. And usually it sells out quickly. And it creates a pretty cool, unique, sort of serendipitously um, type event. 11. How bad is speed reading? Hmm. So I've like read 2 books on how to read quicker, like how to read faster. And the takeaways is that there's certain parts you want to skip through. It's speed read, and certain parts you want to slow down. Now, even if I slowly read a book, during this chunk of life. giving backstory, or like right now I'm reading Benjamin Franklin's book, and I think last night there was a whole section on him trying to sue or fight the Penn family in Pennsylvania. And there's this whole back and forth, and he's gone to England to like talk to people in the parliament to do something about it. This is when America wasn't independent yet. And like me speeding through that, I sort of got the gist of what happened. Like I'm sharing the gist right now. But I don't think slowing down and reading it sentence by sentence would have, like, I might have more clarity on what I just shared, but that extra clarity is like whatever. So I think my gut feeling is telling me that speed reading isn't too bad because you only need to get a gist of what's happening. You wouldn't usually remember the details. Um, so yeah, I think I'm gonna definitely continue speed reading, um, and definitely still slow down when it's something important because I feel like speed reading gets you this, like probably like speed reading will probably get you 90% or like 80% of the gist that's happening. And if you read slowly, you would have maybe gotten like an extra 5 to 10%. Like you would have like 95% on a gist of what's happening. The gist of what's happening is already like quite broad. Um, because you're never going to remember the fine details on who's, like I remember the lawyer's name was Paris, but I don't know his full name. And like I'm not gonna remember the intricacies of that lawsuit. But I'll remember that there was a lawsuit. So me putting in extra effort to slowly read and not speed read isn't going to give me like a more clarity, more better gist of how that lawsuit happened. Number 12. Is there any benefit speeding through life? Hmm, that's interesting. Like you often want to, like you wake up on a day where you feel motivated, you want to sort of speed through your day and get as much things done and just like get that thing submitted a day earlier, um, do many things in a week, drive to a location, beating Google Maps 2 minutes quicker. Like, is there really any benefit through speeding through life? Like, even let's say you do like 1%, like because you speed through life, you get 1% gains every day and it compounds. So let's say instead of dying, I'm going to use like large numbers because I can't think small numbers. But let's say you die being worth, because you didn't speed, you die being worth 100 billion versus a trillion. Because I can see how someone that would have became worth $100 billion, if he sped through life and stacked those 1% improvements, he could probably be worth like a trillionaire. Now, like, is that stress, that constant pushing of yourself, that constant setting of like constantly not being able to breathe and rushing, worth being worth $1 trillion versus 100 billion? Well, I guess that is a big difference, but like once you get work, like once you hit like billionaire status, anything extra makes no difference, I feel like. I don't know, I might be wrong. I think probably like Elon Musk would say otherwise. He would probably be like, yeah, I can do a lot more things with 50 billion than if I only had 1 billion. Interesting. But then like you end up dying and you lose everything anyways. So when you die, whether you died being worth 1 trillion or you died being worth 100 billion, you still lay in the same coffin as everyone else. So like let's say you do strain yourself every single day and you hit that trillion status. Like I guess you could have helped more people, you could have given more money away, you could have saved more lives, you could have done more cool things. but you would be stressed. Whereas like at 100 billion, you still can do those things, but you'll be just cruising through life. That's tough. Yeah. Now the question is like, is doing your best every day considered sort of speeding through life? Because if you're doing your best every day, you're going at 100% every single day, that's technically speeding through life. Or maybe it's sort of like the in between. Like the answer's always in the in between. Like you don't want to be like going 150% every day because that's definitely speeding. If you go at 100%, you're maximizing your potential. And 100% means like it's not too much and not too little. You're not going to get burnt out. You're not going to feel anxiety. Like 100% is you just trying your best every day. So maybe the answer's not cruising through life, not speeding through life, but just really giving it your all each day. But giving your all means just doing what you're capable of, and doing what you're capable of doesn't hopefully lead to stress, anxiety, and exhaustion. That is number 12. I'll do number 13 and then I'll check in and see how you're doing. Anthony, I definitely want to catch up with you. Number 13. I thought that is. Oh, yes, this is perfect segue. Number 13. I thought that this was going to be the perfect outlet for me, like this medium of me being able to just share what I was going through or what I am going through. And I thought this was going to be like the perfect fix, the perfect outlet for when I don't have people that can fill my cup. But I was realizing that I still crave human conversations. Like this can be an outlet to a certain extent, but I do crave that dynamic human interaction, human conversation, because there's so much serendipity. You know, when you talk to someone, they're always at a different state of mind. Like they could have had a good day, they could have had a bad day. The conversation could change as you have lunch, and one person after eating has high energy, the other person sort of dip down. And it's this like conversation is sort of like I've been calling it conversational jujitsu, where it's fun talking to humans, and you can't really have that talking to yourself. Like, I think this can better my conversation, my vocabulary, my stuttering. This can improve those things, but I don't get hit with curveballs. This is sort of like LeBron James, Steph Curry just shooting a bunch of hoops when there's no one around. Like that helps, but you definitely want to be playing and drilling against people. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to save like all these sort of private thoughts, or like if I do want to talk about other people or talk about different sort of localized things, I can just save those for sort of conversations. So that's what I'm going to do. Every time I hang out with friends, I want to just try to just talk, not about other people, but talk about things that I wouldn't share on like on a Zoom call, or like a session like this. And all the things that I would share on a session like this, don't talk about it with friends because I'll use this as the outlet. So I can maximize the time with friends to talk about private things that I probably couldn't share on this. So I think that's going to be the formula. Yeah. When spending time with friends, talk about things that I wouldn't talk online about. And at the same time, all the things I would talk online about, don't spend time talking about it with friends because, I want to save this as the outlet and sort of maximize the time I have. with that friend. So that's number 13. Yeah, Anthony, how's everything been on your end?
Hey, dude. Yeah, it's been good. I thought I was joining a meeting today, only to realize that like five participants and I opened them up and they're all AI bots. I was like,
Yeah,
what the fuck is going on, dude?
yeah. I was like, when I first did this, someone joined, I was like, it was like Mitch's auto AI. I was like, I couldn't tell if he was listening in. I didn't know if it was him, but then afterwards,
Yeah,
I learned it was like a bot. Yeah,
transcribing the whole thing. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, I guess. And then I also got like spammed by all the Gmails. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what's happening. I'm like, I guess I'm gonna open an Otter AI, and I didn't realize that it wasn't the actual meeting. It was just an AI bot transcribing.
yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
I remember talking, and then I couldn't tell if like the person Mitch was just like listening in, and I was like talking as if he was listening in. But now I
Yeah.
also know that they're all bots, and I was talking to myself the whole time.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I've just been hanging the clothes and doing random shit, cleaning up the house and whatnot.
Nice.
Um, yeah, but really chilling.
What's your thoughts on this so far? Like, I'm just being rambling. I don't know what it's like. Give me a third perspective view on what I'm doing.
I heard the latest one. So I heard
Oh,
the what point 12 and 13. I
okay.
actually popped out a little bit because Mariah called me and so I was chatting with her a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, look, I do something similar when I'm driving down to Sydney because I have 3 hours basically just chatting to myself. And so I get a similar thing. So it's like a little bit of self-awareness, a little bit of understanding myself. I find it is a really good time to understand myself, right? So I'm not really looking for answers or looking for what what to do in life necessarily, but I definitely understand. I get to know my thought process, things that I've experienced, and I think it's a lot more of an emotional experience for me
Mm.
rather than a rational one, right?
And then
Um,
do the
because
drives.
of the fact, sorry.
When you do the 3 hour drives, do you like hit a record button and speak out loud, or is it in your mind?
No, it's in my mind, or I speak to myself in the car.
Mm.
So no record, zero, because I feel like with the record button, it's very much it becomes a little bit of a front, right? Because I know it's recording.
Mm.
I I want to make it as clean as possible, whatever. But it's like I prefer it to be messy, and I prefer it to be non-recorded, and um and that kind of thing. A little bit of chaos, but
What
also free flowing.
did you feel crazy the first time you did it? Like I remember I did this before where I was driving and I was just talking out loud to myself alone in the car. Like I remember the first time I did, I felt like a bit crazy.
It yeah, I mean yeah, that thought definitely comes up, but then I realize it's a healthy thing to talk to yourself. I think talking to yourself, you kind of relate it to like like a hermit living in the middle of nowhere talking to himself.
Mm,
Um, but that's because it's excessive, right?
mm,
It's everything in like minute doses is actually quite healthy because there's always like things that you develop from it. I
mm.
think it's more so the fact that if you talk to yourself excessively and you didn't have that and you didn't have much time bouncing ideas off other people, that's when it starts to become a little bit crazy.
Look at
Whereas talking to yourself every so often is quite good.
makes sense. I'm looking at
Yeah.
my point 14 and 15. I think these are good topics to get your thoughts on.
Yeah,
Uh,
what is it?
Number 14. Um, yeah, we're getting into the turtleneck season.
Yes,
It's like starting to get cold.
it
Well,
is
I guess
very
it's a
cold in
bit warmer in
Canberra.
Sydney. Um,
I had a warm up today. Yesterday was really cold.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing I was like starting to think about last week is that do people fall in love? Like when two people meet, they fall in love with version one of each other. And as time progresses, people grow, people change. and now you're sort of say version 2 or version 3 and version 5 of yourself, like even if you were both grown at the same rate and you're both at version 3 of yourself, it's interesting how like both parties fell in love with version 1 of their counterparts. But I guess now they have
Mm-hmm.
to relearn how to fall in love with the new version 3 of their counterparts. And then
Mm-hmm.
if we add a curveball to it, what if people grow at a different rate where there's someone at like version 2 and someone will be at version 7?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I haven't thought about it enough, but sort of like the idea of like imagine if I
You should
ate.
think of it. I think you should think of it as like the same as friendship, because I like to, as I feel like I've as I've gone through life a little bit more, I'm seeing more and more um similarities between friendships and an intimate partner, because essentially at the same time you out and the idea of growth is basically just with life, right? Everyone grows, your friends will grow, your partner will grow, and you're right, and you will always grow at different paces. The idea is that with the partner you live with them, and you interact with them quite a lot more. I think that's the only difference with a friend, on top of the fact that it's a little bit more intimate again. But otherwise, because you're interacting so much, the idea is that even though you grow at different rates, you don't need to always meet at the same time. Hopefully, it's like a constant shifting battle. But when you go ahead, because you're committed to this person, ideally you want to help them along as well and nudge them up with you and grow together. Obviously, when you notice things, when you're saying something like, you know, version 7 of yourself versus version 2 of yourself, unfortunately, that sounds like there's a huge gap already. And in my mind, that sounds like, unfortunately, it's also like too big of a gap, or you haven't helped the person grow with you, or that person's refused to grow with you.
Another interesting point, and then talking about the relationship between, say, sort of like intimate partner versus like a friendship.
Yeah.
So, like, say, in the intimate partner scenario, I'll share both scenarios, and you can give me your thoughts. So, the intimate is, let's say, the the guy fell in love. Well, let's say the girl fell in love with a guy that could look after her, and the guy fell in love with the girl that he could look after. And over time, the girl got really independent. Now she's looking after the guy, and the guy is now being looked after by the girl. And that's a
Hmm.
scenario of people falling in love with different people as time grows. You're no longer
Hmm.
with the person you fell in love with. And then in a friendship scenario, let's say I had a friend that was like an older brother to me, and to me, he was someone that looked out for me and had my back.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
as time went on, the dynamic changed where like now I'm
Yep.
looking like I'm the older brother, I'm looking out for him, and he's being
Mm.
looked after by me.
Mm.
And obviously, I guess sometimes this can work. People are like, yeah, I actually want this change. But I
Yeah.
think most of the time, people are like, I want to be the big brother. Like I don't like I hate the fact that you are now looking out for me. So I think that's sort of, I guess, I don't know, a sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
metaphor.
But what I will say is that there is another aspect to it, right? As much as that's like the simplistic aspect,
Mm,
there's also a time component
mm,
and an interaction component, because it's a relationship. Let's say we're going back to an intimate one. Relationships are, constant and constant and high volume. You're interacting day to day. Let's say if you live together like a million times throughout the 5 days of that week or 7 days of that week. Whereas friendships, you actually have the, I'd say, benefit of time and space. So
mm,
let's say at that point in time, they refuse to grow. And so now you've created that distance in time. Who's to say that, in the future that friendship can't reconnect? You can't rekindle that connection once the person has grown with time and you've had the space apart so that you don't, continue to have a negative experience with each other. And obviously that time can be like 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right?
yeah. Now thinking about it, I think at first I was like, okay, maybe the answer is you want to sort of go into relationships and sort of maintain the dynamic as they grow, you grow, and you sort of maintain that sort of similar
Exactly
ratio.
the same.
But then I was thinking maybe it's like
Life's not that perfect. Life's
healthier
not that perfect.
to be sort of like a say like a martial arts black belt teacher where obviously you as a black belt you want to keep learning and improving, but at the same time you'd want a student to outgrow you and you'd want to start learning from that student and you want to be open to that possibility. So being in a place of sort of flexibility to be able to deal with the shifts is sort of what you can do, what the best that you can do on your end. And you can't really control if the other person does or doesn't do that. Like if the other person has a problem with me outgrowing them, like I can't solve that. That's on them. Um, because if someone
Exactly.
outgrew me, I'd happily want to learn from them and get their 2 cents on my problems, and that wouldn't be a problem for me.
Yeah.
Number
Yeah.
15. This is something I definitely want to get your thoughts on. Um, Something I've been thinking of is like, what should I do? Or I was thinking like, yeah, I have like, how do I categorize or what are my thoughts on friends who spend time with other friends that don't want me to succeed, or friends who spend time with people who talk shit about me? That may or may not happen. That's probably an exaggeration. But what are my thoughts on basically peers who spend time with ops? Ops is sort of like a rap term where you spend time with opposition. But what are my thoughts, or like how do I categorize like people who are in my life that spend time with the ops? I still haven't really, I don't have enough. I have a few case studies. I haven't made any decision yet, but it's just something I've been slowly thinking about and chipping away at this sort of thought.
So what is it? What are your thoughts?
Mm, and my thoughts is like right now I have friends that spend time with ops and I have a great relationship with them. It doesn't seem to like affect our relationship. I still value time with them. They still like respect me as a friend, and as a result, they're in my life. So that's sort of where my thoughts are at. I guess the reason why I would I've been building this thought is because I do think it's sort of like one of those things. Like if I notice someone, like I understand, like if someone is like I used to ask, like, why is this person throwing low jabs? And then after I sort of thought about it, now I understand it comes out of insecurity. It's like a defense mechanism. So I understand what's happening. So I'm trying to understand what this scenario means. So I think that's where I'm at.
Um,
I had an interesting talk with a friend where he was spending time with someone that was hanging out with his ex. It was a very unique scenario where his friend was a part of a bigger group and the bigger group his ex was in. So it's hard for like he can't just stop hanging out with this bigger group because one of his friends ex is in it. And I was like, huh, like that's a interesting scenario. But then again, me knowing this friend and knowing how like the fact that he was sharing this thought obviously means that it makes him feel uncomfortable.
mm,
I'd have the empathy to sort of balance it. It's like, okay, what's worse? Like my close friend feeling uncomfortable that I'm hanging out in a group that has his ex involved and now I'm hanging out with his ex basically, or staying in this group and being a part of this bigger group and wanting to stay involved into that. Like what is higher on the priority? And I think obviously I'll probably put my close friends' thoughts on the higher than that, but then that requires like a level of abundance, a level of sort of confidence. Like most people don't have that level of confidence. So is it unfair to expect other people to do the same thing I would do? But then obviously, like I was gonna say, obviously, would I actually do that? I think I would actually do that.
So
But
you're
like,
saying you'd forego the bigger friendship group in for your close friend.
correct.
With,
If I like in that scenario, I could tell that it's sort of like he's a bit confused, he's a bit iffy that
mm,
this
mm.
other guy is spending time with his ex.
Yeah, look, this is something I do have, strong thoughts on
Mm,
because I've experienced it firsthand. Um, so this is back when I was with Amy, and there were obviously friendship groups or friends that I'd hang out with, and she would, disapprove. Um, and so I
okay,
was like, oh, okay, well, she's disapproving, it's uncomfortable for her. The easiest thing to do is actually just cut them out and then don't spend time with them. I think as I've grown older, I've realized that it's more about, it's not really about and that's the easiest thing to do, and it's not a wrong thing to do. It's just an option. But what I've realized is that what they don't need is there is another option, and the other option is to build the trust in that person to not betray you. I think the discomfort is in the betrayal and the fostering of a strong connection with someone that they're not that your close friend is no longer friendly with. And so you could always still, in my eyes, the second option or another good option is actually continuing to foster uh, continuing to play in that big group, but holding keeping the trust by and not betraying your friend by keeping distance between that person that they're uncomfortable with. And so that's like the best of all worlds. To me, what you give up in the group is you give up something that fills your own cup as well, which is basically the individual connections that you have with being part of a community, because all of us need to be part of a community. And giving up of that, and yes, there's abundance, but being part of a community requires a lot of dedication, a lot of time prospects, a lot of investment that you've already given, and then you're just going to give it up for that one friend. It's a noble cause, but I think it's still it forgoes the self a little bit. Um, and so that's where I'm trying to still optimize all the stuff, keeping the close friend, but also keeping the community that you build, you feel a sense of belonging in as well.
makes sense.
Yeah,
And I think that's a good answer for that specific scenario. I
yeah.
think as I'm talking out loud, I think I had this conclusion earlier, but I was able to just get it out now as I was talking out loud that there's nothing wrong, like there's nothing too wrong about sort of a friend spending time with the ops, spending time with someone that doesn't want you to succeed. Um, and that's okay. Like it's not, it doesn't really destroy them as a character, but what it is, it's probably like a slight red flag. It's a small, like it's a small red flag for someone to be spending time with people that talk shit about others, or spending time with someone that is talking shit about another one of your friends. And I think being like sort of Spain, sort of being in between, doesn't really make you bad a bad person in any way. It's the other person that's bad, but it's probably like a light red flag that you probably want to add to like to the greater picture. Like one red flag, one tiny red flag isn't enough to sort of ruin a friendship, but you want to have it there as sort of like a point.
Mm,
So that was number 15. Number 16. Something I've been doing is I've been thinking about the thought of scheduling things 7 days out. Like do like a minimum 7 day buffer where instead of scheduling in something tomorrow, let's say yesterday, say putting something in Sunday, schedule things with at least 1 week out as it sort of gives a chance for the dust to settle. So for example, these sessions, and I could just upload it today, I guess. But I think it's healthy for me to upload it a week out. And I think a week, like 7 days, it took God 7 days to build the universe, build Earth. It's sort of like the perfect amount of time to schedule things out. So I'm going to start applying that to like outings as well. Yeah, that was point 16. Number 17. There was a paint chip at the back of my bumper on my G-Wagon, and I didn't sort of fix it straight away. Like I sort of let it be. I could have bought the Raptor spray and sprayed over it. I've been doing a thing where I don't fix things instantly. I sort of just give it time. So this sort of relates to point 16. And I just sort of wait until it's really, really needed. And coincidentally, someone hit the back of my car and I got the bumper replaced through insurance and I didn't, like, I saved some money there. And I noticed that this happens a lot of the time where I would just not do things instantly. And over time, that issue, that problem would naturally iron itself out through life. So I think that's definitely something I want to continue doing. But obviously, on the contrary, there's things like making a bed, having a clear desk, um, wiping down the kitchen, the dining table. I think those things you definitely don't want to stack until it's like unbearable. Those things, I think there's definitely an ROI of just sort of routinely clearing those things. But little things like, for example, I have a crack in the front of my car. There's an engine light that sometimes turns on and turns off. Like I can go out of my way to try to fix these things, but it really feels like I'm going against the grain of life. Whereas once it's needed, I'll fix it once it happens. It's very similar to, I think it's a habit I probably need to stop. But when it comes to like stuff like batteries or like alcohol or things I want to buy periodically, I usually wait until there's like a deal on Bargain, some cash back, and get a good deal on it. And then when I actually need it, hold it off further when there isn't a deal happening. I think all this mental energy is actually me going against the grain. Like I should just not search and buy things, go out of my way to buy things just because it's on sale. And when I do need it, hold it off for a few more days if I can to see if a sale pops up, to just like not looking at all. And when I need it, just purchase it for full price. I think that's something I definitely need to pivot to. I think it's going to save me money, time wise, energy wise. It's going to save me money in the long run. But it's sort of hard to make that step because I've always been good and I've always been sort of trying to save money, um, get good deals, get bang for buck. So I think that's something I'm going to need to pivot. Very similar to taking tolls. I've now started taking tolls a lot. Um, Usually, like you're paying $1 a minute, you save. So if a toll costs $12, you usually save 12 minutes. But there are scenarios where you only save 6 minutes and you're sort of paying $2 a minute that you save. And then that's sort of when I get a bit iffy. But I think eventually I'll need to take the step where I even take the toll route in those scenarios. Like even there's often scenarios where you're paying $10 to save 3 minutes. So that's like $3 a minute you save. So that means you have to be worth more than $180 an hour. I do notice that the ability to just sort of drive not in traffic, there's no start stop. Yes, the distance might be longer, but it's a mentally more relaxing drive. And time and mental energy is something you can't buy back, just like sleep. If you lose sleep, you can't really catch up on sleep. You've lost that night of good sleep. So I think that's definitely something I'm gonna have to make the leap to. It's hard to do while I'm bleeding out. Like I think I can't wait to when I start being profitable because I'll be able to really start really investing in me and doing all these extra little things that don't have an ROI in the short term but stack up over the long run. Number 18. Um, I had this old man named Jens who used to teach me piano, and he had a very carefree attitude. I remember driving into his driveway one Saturday for the morning piano lessons, and I scraped the sides against one of his, I don't know, maybe it was a side brick or like a hole, and that's what caused a chip that I was talking about. So this is a full circle moment. Um, and he was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Like, don't trip about. Come in and let's play some piano." Now I couldn't tell if that is just who he is as a person. He's just a very carefree person, or if he purposely did that because he didn't want me to worry. He wanted to sort of get my mind out of this sort of mindset of like, "Oh my God, I scratched my car," and like get into piano. And he did that consciously to sort of zap me out of that rabbit hole that I could have my mind could have delved into. But I think either way, if it was conscious or not conscious, I think that carefree attitude is definitely something that it's worth implementing. Sort of, if things don't work out, things don't. If it rains on my birthday, then it rains on my birthday, and we can't do a camping trip. Like it's gonna be fine. But I think also another thing I've been learning is that having people that you can trust and that you know can stand on their own 2 feet. Like, for example, I have this upcoming camping birthday trip. The close friends I've invited, I have so much trust in them where I know that whatever happens will be fine. If it rains, we'll figure it out together. We'll think of a plan B together. If one person forgets food or one person doesn't have a sleeping bag, like we'll figure it out. Like having people that you can trust and that you know can stand like when I see it's sort of like your Walking Dead apocalypse crew. Like you want people that like a strong team in the apocalypse consists of a bunch of basically leaders. There is like a leader, I guess, in the crew, but like it's like all these people individually could go off and do things on their own. And then that level of confidence allows me to be carefree, allows me to not even think about what may or may not happen for this birthday camping trip. There's so many unknown variables. Like I haven't been to this campsite. I don't know where the campsite is. I don't know if they'll allow campers. We're doing it on a weekend. I don't know if there's going to be other people there. So there's like so many things I can think about, but I have confidence in the people I'm going with to sort of just not worry about those things. So I guess being carefree, sort of having confidence in yourself, I guess. Having confidence that I know that, hey, like that crack, it's going to figure itself out. If need be, I'll figure out how to get the resources to fix it. So I think that carefree attitude does come from the confidence you have in yourself. But at the same time, I think it comes with age. Like the reason why my old piano teacher had that carefree attitude because gone through, say, 70, 80 years of life, he would see how things that he worried about naturally just ironed itself out. And I think when you consistently see things iron itself out over time, you're not going to be worried about some 7-figure divorce law case you're going through. That's something I have a mentor go through, and he's so nonchalant about it. Because it will pan itself out. Life irons things out. Life irons out problems. I think that's a cool quote. Number 19. I had a mentor that used to badmouth and talk shit about other people. But we're in a setting where like everyone was scared to say anything. And also he sort of said like, hey, like I'm not talking shit, I'm just speaking facts. That's something he talked about a lot. I'm speaking facts. But something felt weird about it. Something felt, see, Anthony, thanks for joining in. Something felt weird about, like, it didn't feel like he was speaking facts. Like, it felt like he was bad mouthing other people. And I think that led to me being also scared to objectively speak facts about others. I think I've gotten better. I've gotten really good at just sort of stating the facts on different people. But that definitely scarred me because it made me overcorrect and say nothing about other people, not criticize other people at all, especially with friends. Because when I spend time with friends, I want to sort of analyze, oh, hey, what's your thoughts on that person? Here, this is what my thoughts are. So I think I've definitely fixed the overcorrection because the overcorrection happened where I just like didn't really judge other people at all because I saw him judge people so much. So now I'm able to get better at comfortably sort of stating facts. Number 20. I think I already talked about this series is basically me doing self-love and filling my own cup. I liked how Anthony joined in and we had that mini conversation between, and then I sort of went back to just me speaking my mind. So I do like this balance. I do have that insecurity that Anthony's never going to join these ever again because it's boring. And I think that's fine. These are meant to be selfish, and he knows that when I spend time with him, I'm going to make it about him and I'm going to hear him out, and it's going to be a different dynamic. So I need to be really selfish with these. I might update the calendar invite. Let's update. Yeah, I won't update it. I don't want to scare people off by writing in the thing where Andy will selfishly talk majority of the time. Yeah, I won't write that in yet. Number 21. People love talking so much that they can't read people's boredom. Something I'm super aware of is like when I'm talking, I could tell when people get bored, I try to cut it short. It's weird how a lot of people don't have that level of spatial awareness. They can't tell that like, yo, like this dude is like getting like often I'll be like bored of someone talking and they'll just keep talking. Like I'm like, dude, like read the room. Or like it's hard because people love freaking talking. They take silence as listening. Yeah. And I think that the point I try to make there is like, wow, people really love talking. Like talking is addictive. And this is what I'm doing now. Obviously, it's much better if there's someone listening. But yeah, I could see how this could be addictive. And that's point 21. 22. When someone invites me to things, I thought of this new concept of like, hey, if you're in my shoes and you just finished a weekend birthday trip, you have a meeting on Wednesday, you're bleeding out and you're not making money, would you say yes to this camping trip on Monday, Tuesday that you invited me to? If they say yes, then okay, cool. If you would say yes and you're in my shoes, then I'll go ahead and do this with you. If they were to say, yeah, actually, no, not really, then it's like they're saying no for me. I don't know if this is like the best scenario because I think people don't have that level of empathy. Like people would selfishly say, yes, I would. But then when the time comes and you're like, hey, I need you to come to this, they're gonna politely say no. So I think this is good on theory, but I feel like people don't know themselves enough to give a really honest answer. They'll probably give a biased answer like, hey, I need a ride or we can go together. So if I was in your shoes, I'd say yes. But the truth is, if they really had, like, were able to put themselves in my shoes, they'll probably say no. Whereas I have the capacity to say yes and force myself to do all those things mentioned. So I think the better answer is just sort of feeling my gut feeling, going back, thinking of the past invites I sent them. Like, have they been like I threw a lot of easy invites that were like no's to. So I think I'll probably say no to that type of person. Whereas another friend, I think it depends on the scenario. I think if I can predict the scenario, I've got to say no. That's it. Always sums down to that. If I can predict the outcome, and it's like pretty meh. But even if I can predict the outcome and it looks fun, then I compare that predicted outcome versus the predicted result of me not going. And right now, if I have that extra Monday and Tuesday, actually, like, that's unpredictable. So I got to stack that, because every extra day I have is like, who knows what may happen. Because like my days, like each day is worth a lot. Like in the short term, I don't know the ROI of each day, but in the long run, it's like, yeah. So that wraps it up. I'm like pretty spent. I'm pretty tired, not gonna lie. So we went through 22 points. Pretty impressive. Today was the 7th of April, 24. Put those 21 points in. And now we're down to 14 points. I'll probably stack it up until the next week's score. But yeah, this was really, really fun. I appreciate life.